On today's episode of Locked On 76ers, the arrow is pointing up for the basketball team as they are now second in the Eastern Conference with one game up on the Milwaukee Bucks. How did we get here? Why this is so important for the basketball team at this time? We'll dive into it next right here, Locked On 76ers.
You are Locked On 76ers, your daily Philadelphia 76ers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. First-time users can receive 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with the promo code LOCKEDON. That's prizepicks.com, promo code LOCKEDON. What's good, D?
It's good to have you back, man. That's what's good. Back from that long road trip. What was that, 9 days
I
on the
think, man, I
road?
lost count. Yeah, I think it was 9
All right.
days. Yeah, I lost count.
Well, it's good to have you back, man. And everybody, welcome. You're Locked On 76ers. I'm Devon Givens from 97.5 The Fanatic Radio in Philadelphia. Alongside my co-host and partner, as always, Keith Pompey from theinquirer.com. Thanks for making Locked On 76ers your first listen every day. And remember, Locked On 76ers is free and available on all platforms, including YouTube right here. Locked On 76ers. Keith, when we last left, yes, the Sixers were, in fact, in the mix for the third and the second spot, mainly hanging around that fourth, fifth spot in the Eastern Conference. But after 5 games, here we are. They're coming back home. They get their week started on Wednesday when they host the Brooklyn Nets. But at this time, man, they are second at 30-16 in the Eastern Conference, 4.5 games back of the Boston Celtics for the top spot, and a full game up on the Milwaukee Bucks and the Brooklyn Nets, and 2 on the Cleveland Cavaliers, who are sitting in the 5th spot. They're 8-2 in their last 10, 18-4 over their last 22. 5-game winning streak, as we know, and they have won their last 7 games on the road, where they are 13-9. Keith, they're clicking at the right time, man.
Yeah, they are. And the funny part is it's kind of sort of like they're still figuring things out.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, not funny. That's the scary part about this. They're still figuring things out. And I honestly think that the thing that really showed me something was, particularly their last game when, they didn't have their best 2 players, but they were still able to go out there and produce and win and battle back from 31 points. I mean, it reminded me of
21.
21. Yeah, Maxey had the 32. 21. Mm-hmm. Thanks for the correction.
Mm-hmm.
But it reminded me of like games in the past where we saw Maxey get off and do things when Embiid didn't play. But it was never to this magnitude, I felt like, with so much at stake. It was always before it was like, they're coming in here, the other team, they're this and that, they're going to take the Sixers lightly. Nah, I mean, but this one it was also a group effort, a group effort. Everyone performed, they did something. I felt like it was a great coaching job as well. But to me, that showed me that the Sixers are a legitimate team. Now, again, I know that they're going to have to face these other quality teams head to head, but it showed me that this is a making of a quality team. And I give you credit. You always said they were. I had my doubts. But to me, this road trip, and particularly this game against the Sacramento Kings without Harden and Embiid, showed me that the Sixers are a legitimate contender in these.
And look, you can say all that, of course, about what you felt, but you never said that they weren't a contender. It was just where in that mix of contending teams where they stood. And when you go on the road like this, listen, this is the first time since 84, 85, Keith, I think it is, that they have gone on the road and went undefeated in 5 games or more on a particular trip. And they're just out there, as you said, figuring things out where they're still figuring things out. And they tinkered with their lineup again, where they had Maxey coming off the bench and DeAnthony Melton back in the startup. His scoring is not there like it was before. But the one thing that we thought when he came in here in the summer was his impact certainly will be felt defensively. The bonus and the cherry on top of things with him was the scoring. And while that has taken a back seat right now, and it'll eventually come back because that's just the type of player that he is. And he's going to keep shooting. He's going to keep working. And they're going to keep trusting him to do so. As you said, they're still figuring things out, and they have gotten themselves back into it. And even the last time when we talked about their 8-game winning streak earlier in the year, Keith, when they were winning their 8 games, the other teams were winning their games. And that's what prevented them from moving up higher in the standings before. If you remember, New York was on a long winning streak, the Knicks. Then Brooklyn was on a 12-game winning streak. Boston and Milwaukee, Cleveland, all of them in front of them were on that long winning streak while they were doing it. So they were never really able to just break into that top part of the Eastern Conference like you typically would when you go on a winning streak like they did. And right now it's 5. That's fantastic. Still plenty of games to play, right? With all these games left to go, 36 games, I think it is, left in the campaign. And they really did a good job on this road trip. It can't be undersold what they did and how important this was for them to do this together and do so as a team, because you just highlighted it perfectly. They did this, and especially that one there on the road against the Sacramento Kings down 21. They did that as a team where they all had a hand in that victory, including the coaching staff, of how to figure that thing out and how to pull that W out there on the road. So they have to be feeling good about where they are right now, feeling good about themselves. You go around them. They must feel pretty good about the work that they did during this trip.
Yeah, they do. They also feel good. A side note, just joking, they feel good about the Eagles winning too, the way they were talking about that.
As they should. Yeah.
Yes, they should. But yeah, they do. We'll talk about it more, but like in other segments, certain guys who stepped up. The one thing is, it's funny, and I didn't write this, but I'm pointing this out in the thing. It was shoot around, and I'm sitting there and I'm talking to Tobias Harris, which is sitting on the baseline floor seats and just chatting, and Daniel House comes over and he stops and he flashes a 4. He had his 4 like this. Mm-hmm. And Tobias, I thought I had a I'm like, yo, man, where my other hand at? Where my other finger? But anyway, so then Tobias gets up and they tap hands like that. And Daniel said, yeah, 4 for the team. Daniel says 4, Keith, for the team. And that's all they talk about is like this brotherhood, like how, no matter what, we're all in it for each other. And we're talking about a dude who basically lost his spot. You know what I mean? Like he was getting in. Now he played the last game, but he was basically just getting in whenever like they needed somebody for cleanup duty or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, you know what I mean? So to me, that's really standing out about this group, that they're bonding, that they're playing. Everybody can't be happy. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say guys are happy with their roles because they're not. But at the same time, they're all like basically saying, forget that. We all got a common goal. And that's something that's really standing out to me.
That's encouraging because I remember in the preseason when we had a chance to, have those conversations with Doc. And I remember the one question I asked him, hey, everybody's all in until their minutes are taken, right? It all sounds good. And I remember sitting down with them individually on media day and asking them those questions. How are you going to handle it when your minutes are cut and you're not getting the minutes that you think you expect and deserve? And you never know how guys are going to turn out. And in this particular case, as you just said right there, you had a front row seat with Tobias and seeing Daniel House and 4, and the 4 is for the team. Guy taking his rotation spot he's not in a rotation. And he comes in and he hits 2 big 3-pointers, right, for them during that stretch. The one that ended the second quarter going into the halftime where he, what was it, like
31.
Close to 40 feet out,
yeah.
Buzzer beater. And then he hit another big one. And real fast, before we step away for a second, there was one that I highlighted in the fourth quarter. It was the start of the fourth quarter, Keith. There was a play that happened where Shake Milton got into the paint and he took a shot, missed it, but he got the offensive rebound. He then goes along the baseline as he has the offensive rebound to his right after he secures the ball. He's going along the baseline. And Daniel House, so again, has already hit 2 big shots. He's in the corner. So while Shake had about 2 or 3 defenders on him because of where he was positioned when the offensive rebound, as you would imagine, it's a little congested, He was going to pass the ball to Daniel House, but instead, House pointed now to his left, where George Niang was on the wing, wide open, and says, "Throw it out there." And he directed him to throw it out there. That was the better pass. He was more wide open instead of a hockey assist of pass and then pass. No, they see you're about to pass it to me. Just kick it out there if you got that angle. And Shake is pretty good with his left hand, his offhand. So he rifled it to George, and he knocked it down. And I thought that was unselfish basketball of a guy who is out of the rotation, as you talked about, but was still unselfish enough to recognize what was the better play in that moment for the team. And he did that without having to touch the basketball. So that stood out to me. And that's something that is from a couple of days ago, and I remembered it, as you mentioned, what Daniel House meant. So when we come back, Keith, let's talk about who stood out on this 5-game road trip in order for them to be 30-16, 14 games over 500. And right there, again, number 2 in the Eastern Conference. We'll dive into that next right here, Locked On 76ers.
Let's talk about prize pick, right? Tonight, I'm taking Joel Embiid to score more than 30 points. Tobias Harris to grab more than 7.5 rebounds. Kevin Durant to have less than 6.5 assists. Well, he ain't playing. So let's say Ben Simmons to have less than 12 assists. And James Harden to have more than 12, right? So this is how it works. So we're talking about prize pick. So how it works is you pick up to 25 times your money on any entry. No competing against other people. It's just you and the projections available, right? Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It's that easy. Safe and fast withdrawals, right? So here's the deal. What you do is you download the Prize Pick app, or you go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive 100% instant deposit matchup to $100 with the promo code Locked On. If you deposit $100, Prize Picks will give you $100. If you deposit $50, Prize Picks will give you $50. Don't forget the enter promo code Locked On at sign up, and for an instant deposit matchup to $100.
Thanks for making Locked On 76ers your first listen. For your next listen, check out the Locked On Now podcast. Nightly recaps of every NBA game with analysis from our local experts. It's free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Welcome back, Keith. Someone who stood out because, again, this was a total team road trip of the 5-0, and specifically in this final game where they were without their 2 all-star level players in Joel Embiid and James Harden. Who stood out to you along this road trip, man, for them to get this done? And it may not be because of points, but it could just be because of something else that this player that you identify has really stood out for you here.
The person who really stood out to me the most was George Niang, right? And I'm saying this because you look at it. Well, we're talking about the second game of the trip. They go up against the Lakers, and we know Joel had the game-winning basket, but then they came back, and George Niang was credited with the block of Harden with 3.1 seconds left, right? So that iced it. This last game, George Niang was a plus 21 in 27 minutes, right? And then it's funny, the game after they beat the Lakers, he was a plus 18 in 18 minutes and 32 seconds against the Clippers. Mm-hmm. So George Niang was the guy who kind of stood out to me. Like during this road trip, we're talking about a guy who came off the bench every game. You talked about the huge shot he made. Here's a guy who averaged 8.6 points. He averaged 2.8 rebounds, 1.8 assists, right? So you're saying to yourself, like, come on, Pompey, well, what are you doing? That's not enough to make him stand out. But he shot 45.8% on three. He played 19 minutes, and all the intangible things. To me, we always
Now, George Niang holds definitely a big spot on this roster, a big spot on this team for what he does with his outside shooting. He is just he's that important when it comes to his outside shooting. They certainly need it, and he's a guy that yeah, he stood out to me as well, Keith. One that I'll give you is honestly is Montrezl Harrell, and because I am still of the belief that when it comes to playoff time, they're going to have to figure something out defensively with the center, where PJ Tucker, yes, they can experiment with that, and that will work sometimes. And Montrezl Harrell will have block shots. He'll have games where he'll do that also, and he'll be able to have an impact in that way. Paul Reed will have his good moments, and he'll have his up and down moments because he's just at that stage of his career as a player right now. But Montrezl Harrell just being steady over the course of the 5 games, and then you just concluded with that Sacramento game. He has been a surprise for me. And while I like the signing late in the summer for the Sixers, and I thought that he would be pretty good, he's had some moments where I was questioning if he was going to be that. But he is really, as far as when you talk about the 4 fingers that they show each other and the team and all, he seems to be one of the guys that I like to isolate and highlight of how he has accepted his role and then comes in and thrives in his role when he's out there on the floor. More of a positive than a negative, and that's what you need. And we know he can score, but sometimes it's that defensive effort. And when you talk about George Niang, not known for his defense and having that block shot along with Embiid over Russell Westbrook to close out the Lakers game, and Montrezl Harrell, along this great stretch that they've been having, getting block shots, altering shots, not giving up, and effort wise, he's out there trying and not just focus on the offensive side of the floor. That's one that stood out for me is Montrezl Harrell and what he's been able to do.
I agree.
Yeah. So just good stuff overall with this team. On the other side, our final segment, we'll dive into it a little bit more along this road trip and what they have done. And honestly, a little bit more of Tyrese Maxey and where Maxey stands in this whole thing now that he's coming off the bench in his new role. We'll do that next in our final segment right here, Locked On 76ers.
Yo, we're excited to talk about our new sports betting partner for Locked On because they're the number one on sports betting in America, FanDuel. If you're new to FanDuel, that's even better. They have so many great features that make betting on sports fun and easy. New customers join today and get started with $150 in free bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bets. Sound like a good deal to me, D. Just sign up at fanduel.com/locked on. FanDuel has all your favorite bets for the money line to point spreads to player props. Plus, you can even combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with a same game parlay, right? So what you got to do is you go to the app, right? It's safe and secure and easy to use. So football fans don't miss out. Place your $5 bet and get $150 in free bets, win or lose, at fanduel.com/locked on. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
All right, man. Final one. And we mentioned his name a little bit earlier. He had 32 points, which is a game high against the Sacramento Kings. He has had some outbursts. He has provided the spark off the bench that they certainly have needed. They've been able to get by without having him on the bench and still have offensive productions for the team in general. But the difference that Tyrese Maxey makes coming off the bench, why this was a good move, Keith. Why do you see it now that you've seen it for a few games? Why do you look at this one and, as of right now at least, feel like this was a good move?
Yeah, I mean that's the key word. Right now, I feel like it's a good move. I just feel like him and James Harden, and we talked about this before they even made the move. I feel like him and James Harden are defensive liabilities when they're out there together. I feel like their perimeter defense is so bad that it makes everything else goes out of whack when they're both on the court together. However, though, when you look at it, more so to me, I feel like now, as far as him being a spark off the bench, I mean, he's a great player and they're going to stagger the lineups and this and that. So, a lot of people are like, oh, look what he's doing off the bench. I feel like it benefits Tobias Harris more so than it does him, because when they're in that starting lineup, before they start staggering things, I feel like it gives Tobias Harris more opportunities to show what he can do. And it gets him a little bit more engaged in the game on both ends of the floor. And if you notice, when Tobias Harris's offense is clicking, then his defense starts clicking as well. So I feel like there's more balance that way. You get better, you better utilize Tobias. Now, when you said right now, that's the key word. I mean, my thing is for Maxey is this summer, I know he's going to work on his J. He always does. He does offensive things. But I think that if I would love to see him work more on his defense, because he's such a great player. I mean, he showed that the last game with those 32 points and the way that he scored, that he's not a backup. He's not. But right now, the way that things are, they need somebody out there, because let's face it, Melton is providing the defense, but he's been a little bit in the shooting slump as of late, right? But he's providing the defense. But I really would like to see Maxey work on his defensive skills in the offseason so he can come back and be a better player, because, I mean, right now, that's the only thing holding him back is guys just, oh, there he goes. Let's run through. Let's go. Let's attack him. But outside of that, he's great. He's a great player.
Yeah, and for those who don't know, I was against it, having him coming off the bench. Understood it. Never acted like I didn't know what it meant, having someone like him be a spark off the bench. And a lot of teams have it. The Sixers have not. Shake Milton can do it a bit. George Niang, as we talked about. But that's pretty much it. That's the extent of it all for the 76ers. And right now, for him to take on this role, however he got there, whether he volunteered, whether Doc Rivers just simply asked him to do it, it's working out. And he's a young player. He has much, much more to do in this league, where this is not a big deal right now. And it's helping the team. He's still playing his 30-plus minutes. He's still able to score and run the second unit when he's out there, and just get off that way against those second teams, where he has a distinctive advantage as a starting caliber player that you talked about against those teams. The defense, you're right. It's going to be something that needs to be a focus in the offseason. Right now, when it comes to the defense, is just simply give effort at this point. Just give effort. But right now, to unleash him, if you will, I'm not saying it like he's not able to do what he wants in the offensive flow of things at the start of the games as a starter, but to have him come in off the bench and just roll, then it's time for him to simply go out there and roll. So he's doing it. And this is what we talked about. For the team, for the team. Everybody's doing something right now that's for the team. And that should be highlighted when it comes to Tyrese Maxey. If this team is going to be a contender, then they're going to have to go out there and they're going to have to do some sacrificing. It's now, again, we go all the way back to the beginning of the season, Keith. Who's going to sacrifice what? And right now, it appears, at least right now, that guys are sacrificing for the betterment of the team, and that could pay really good dividends for them. And then as we get closer to the deadline, Keith, we're now like 2.5 weeks away from the deadline. Mm-hmm. That's going to be something that we look at too when it comes to this basketball team, and what maybe that has them thinking twice about a move potentially, because of how guys are fitting right now, how it's all coming together for this team at this moment. Could change by the deadline, but right now that could be something that maybe has them pull back on pulling the trigger on the deal.
I agree.
All right, man. Well, listen, that was a fun one. Great to have you back in the area as the team concludes their 5-game road trip undefeated in second place in the Eastern Conference, 14 games, over 500. We thank you all for making Locked On 76ers your first listen every day. For our next listen, Check us out tomorrow on Locked On Now podcast. We'll dive into more things involving the Philadelphia 76ers as we get ready for the Brooklyn Nets on Wednesday. Now make your second listen Locked On NBA. Locked On experts covering the biggest stories around the NBA every Monday through Friday in less than 30 minutes. Is free and available wherever you get your podcast. Keith, do you mind letting the good folks know where they can find us?
Yeah, I mean, like my man D just said, wherever you get your podcast, you better come to Lock On 76ers. It's free and available. But also you can check my man D out tonight on the Divine Giving Show, 97.5 FM from 8 to 12 p.m. My man's working the late shift tonight. So you can check him out, listen to him, driving somewhere, you're at work, at the home, just chilling, just listen to my man. He'll keep you up to date with everything. You can also follow D at DivineG975, right, on Twitter. So do that. Follow my man on Twitter. Also, you can follow me on Twitter at Pompey on Sixers, and you can read my work in Inquirer.com and in the Philadelphia Inquirer.
Absolutely. So make sure you all go read out the best content, of course, in the Sixers world, where about this basketball team was out there on the road trip. Make sure you follow and check out Keith's work at Inquirer.com. And yeah, I'll have a lot to talk about with the Sixers, but I'm pretty sure it'll be heavy Eagles after they advance to the NFC Championship game. All right, man. Appreciate it. Talk to everybody tomorrow. Thanks.
Peace.